Welcome to Our Voices. In many African communities, the milestones throughout a person's life are marked by traditions and often recognized by unique rites of passage, ceremonies, or rituals. But it seems a girl's coming of age on the continent has come under scrutiny, with many asking if these practices are still relevant in today's society. I'm Hadiza Kiari.
And I'm Orion Itangishaka.
Hi, I'm Ayen Bior.
And I'm Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick. Now, before we continue, we do want to advise you that some of the content in our show today is of a sensitive nature, so we just want you to be aware of that. In rural Malawi, families send girls as young as 12 for initiation, a traditional cultural practice that marks a child's entry into adulthood. But child rights campaigners say the ritual entices young girls into early sex, marriage, and teenage pregnancy, forcing many to drop out of school. Well, one local organization is working to change this, saying information is key. VOA's Gwen Uten brings you this report from Lamek Messina in Mulanje.
Madalitso Makosa was 13 years old when she underwent a traditional Malawian initiation ritual to become an adult.
After the initiation ceremony, the counselors advised me to perform a kusasa fumbi, or removing the dust ritual, with a man of my choice. I chose to sleep with my former boyfriend, but unfortunately I became pregnant.
Removing the dust refers to a girl losing her virginity, often without protection, to become an adult. Those who become teenage mothers pay the price for this tradition.
When I discovered that I was pregnant, I was devastated because I had to drop out of school. I am now struggling to get support to take care of my baby. I wish I had continued with my education.
In this initiation demonstration arranged for a reporter, counselors show how they prepare girls for marriage and for sex.
I give them these lessons so that they will keep their man and prevent him from going out to look for other women. Because if he goes out and finds excitement in other women, he's likely to dump her.
Child rights campaigners say the initiation ritual fuels Malawi's high rate of child marriage. Half of girls here marry before age 18. Malawian group YouthNet and Counseling, or YoNetGo, wants to keep girls in school with a more age-appropriate initiation ritual.
That's a traditional cultural thing that people believe in, and it would be very difficult to just say, let's end initiation ceremonies. But what we're saying is, can we package the curriculum in such a way that the young people are accessing the correct curriculum at the correct time.
YoNetGo is working with initiation counselors and traditional leaders to tone down Malawi's initiations. Already some areas are banning the practice of encouraging sex after the ceremony.
We said, no. This is why we have a lot of dropouts from school. That's why we have the population has just shot so high. Just because of that, because a lot of girls now, they have got babies. Most of them, they are not in marriage.
To further discourage teenage pregnancies, traditional leaders like Chikumbu are dividing girls' initiation rituals into two camps. One is a simple ceremony for teenage girls like Makosa, while the other provides some sex education for older girls who are preparing to marry. Gwen Uten for reporter Lamek Messina in Mulanje.
You know, this story out of Malawi, I watched it a few times, and I have to tell you, when you really listen to some things in this piece, it makes me cringe. And it really makes me think about, do some of these practices that we still see around today make Africa seem backward and primitive?
I think it's
complicated.
Depends. Sometimes.
Depends.
And before I even say anything about this story, what I would like to point out is that, unfortunately, it comes from a very well-crafted societal system that is built on the understanding that society is not just going to let you live your own life and not have guidance, direction, or even support. I mean, unfortunately, there are bad parts of it, but the system itself is a system that should be preserved. I mean, we have many parts of the continent where you have ceremonies for every single step of life, where at birth you're given an actual ceremony to introduce you to the world, a ceremony to officially give you a name. You have a ceremony at puberty, where they teach you that you're now becoming an adult and you should be careful and that you should know that you can bring forth life. You have a ceremony at marriage, which is very important. You have
well-meaning practices.
Yeah, well-meaning practices. You have a ceremony when you get older, you're given responsibilities in a community where you can actually solve conflict. So a lot of these societal systems and traditions should be preserved. However, going back to that story, it's very hard to even think about it, that women are the engines of such brutal activities that they subject their daughters to. So we should try to have more campaigns that help these mothers to break away from the pressure of society to go through these things, especially from their daughters, you know?
Right, and I just want to point out that even though we have this umbrella of rites of passage, there is a difference between the harmful ones and the ones that are healthy, the ones who really help young women grow into older women. Case in point is what we just saw in this video. It made me very angry. I got really emotional to see this young girl who was otherwise a schoolgirl get pregnant because of this initiation, and now she has a young child and she's struggling to provide for herself and for her child. So that's 2 generations of people in Malawi that have these long-term negative impacts of this initiation. And I hope that we are not using culture as an excuse to allow these harmful practices to go on. And it makes me really angry to realize that a woman's worth is only seen if she can please a man. And her marriageability, her ability to keep a man, that determines her worth. And that, I think, that is what really makes me angry when I watch the video.
It bothers me when it goes from a practice that has some cultural value to it and it crosses the line into this form of social control and social pressure. Because if it is so well-meaning and it is meant to help a girl enter the next stage of her life, shouldn't there be something in place that helps set her up for success and not for failure, because she's now entered this next phase of her life with a child, with no visible means of support, financial support, with no education? How does that really help at the end of the day? And why do women's bodies always have to be on the line or on the receiving end of this? That is the issue I have.
I see what you guys are saying, but we should also remember not all of these practices are necessarily negative or even weird or bad, because I'll give you a typical example. In northern Nigeria, the rites of passage of preparing a female when she's about to get married requires what we call kaya mata, which in English means natural aphrodisiac. So the whole process involves steaming the girl. She also gets waxed, and in some instances she has to ingest it. She gets henna applied and oils, you know.
So she's
pretty
pampered.
Right.
Wait, you said steaming. So how does the steaming work?
She's covered all over and she's steamed the whole of her body to make her smell good. The whole idea of this is for it to enhance the bride's sexual experience with her husband, with the hope that the marriage is going to last much longer. And so this practice has been in existence in northern Nigeria for a really long time. As a matter of fact, the West and Eastern Nigeria adopted it. Young girls, as a matter of fact, have also started doing these things without the help of their parents. So, you know, it's
But are there any negative aspects to this?
I feel like the negative is the fact that these young girls are going into this, like, it doesn't matter at what cost, they're trying to get these things done. And on the other hand, you also have the sellers trying to sell this natural aphrodisiac and just getting just about anything. You don't really know what they're selling to you. So it could be potentially harmful.
We can preserve some of those rituals and some of those experiences. But just like the UNESCO Association said in the story, I think that we should, in terms of the harmful practices, we should focus and target in the actual practices that have to do with harming a girl, so that we don't attack the whole culture. And, you know, because we could get a lot of pushback with that. But to get the impact that we need, I think we should specifically target the bad part of that ritual instead of the whole ritual.
And is there a part of the continent for whom it matters not what Western cultures and what other cultures and countries think about their practices and rites of passage? Should they care? I mean, think of some of these communities that are extremely rural. So for them, of course, you know, their lives are very traditional. It's about a continuation of centuries-old traditions from their ancestors. I mean, they don't care whether their practices hurts the country's foreign direct investment or how it makes Africa look. Their worldview is different precisely because they are not part of the global economy. And they might feel, look, we don't need the validation of America America or Europe or Australia. So, it's their Africa too. And, their perspective is different from the more urbanized, more globalized, more electrified and connected Africans.
Yeah. In fact, throughout my career as a journalist, I've heard many times that I should not cover the negative stories about Africa because it makes Africa look bad. But the interesting thing is I've only heard that from privileged, elite, educated Africans. I've spoken to a lot of people in IDP camps. I've spoken to people who are survivors of a lot of different issues on the continent, but they are not the ones who have told me that they don't want me to cover a certain issue because of how it makes the continent look bad. So it's interesting that you noticed that too.
Yeah. When I think of the rites of passage, for me, I think about tribal marks, and for obvious, or probably not so obvious reasons, okay, I come from a family that actually upholds this tradition, and that's why I got marked. I'm not sure if you guys can see, but I guess the picture would tell the story if you look at the picture on the screen. So what's so interesting that you guys mentioned rural and urban is the fact that there's a stereotype that people who have been marked come from rural or villages, which is absolutely not true. Because I grew up in the urban area, in the city, and both of my parents were educated, but they chose to follow the culture, and that's a choice that they made, which I don't hold anything against them. But I do remember that growing up, I didn't really notice it was there until I got ridiculed by kids. And it did make me sad, obviously, and I would cry and I would talk to my mom. I asked her questions like, why? Why would you guys even do this? And she said, well, that was just a tradition, we couldn't run away from it. But to me, that was not enough answers. I needed more. I was reading up and I found out that it actually dates back from the slavery period. They wanted something that would show what tribe or clan they came from. So the only way to identify them was to actually mark them. So that kind of made sense if you think about it, because at least where you can locate your family. Yeah, exactly.
It's literally part of your identity.
Exactly. But then remember that my parents were not born during the slave era.
That's true.
Yeah. Neither was I. So why continue this tradition? So for me, it still was not an answer. So I asked, okay, what about religion? And I found out that the religion does not even allow this. It's completely haram.
That's haram.
It is haram, yeah. And pretty much even in Christianity, you're not allowed to have marks. So no religion actually, encourages that.
Right, and sometimes it's also a choice between religion and culture came before religion, and so there are all these choices to make. What do you think? Do you think there are some rites of passage we have to do away with? Do you think there are some we need to keep on the continent? Any experiences that you want to share with us? Let's get talking on social media. Tell us what you think on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our handle there is @VOA Our Voices. We've also got videos and updates there for you. And we know that you like us, so we trust that you are going to share our pages with your friends and your followers.
Also, don't forget to use the hashtag VOA Our Voices.
Remember, we're on WhatsApp too. Send us your videos, your messages. Our number is US country code +1 304 506 3638. So reach out to us and add your voice to our discussion.
When we come back, we'll talk about other coming-of-age traditions for girls in Africa. But first, we want to remind you that you are the 5th person on this panel, and it's time for your voices to be heard. Please post your comments on social media and send us your selfies. We'll be right back.
My rights were infringed upon. I realize now that I was forced to sleep with a man whom I did not choose, and it was not even my time to have sex. So, I still feel bad about it, because I never wanted it. And this was an old man who had unprotected sex with me.
Like Voice of America on Facebook. Follow VOA on Twitter. Join VOA on our YouTube channel. Like, follow, join VOA.
You're with Our Voices. Welcome back. Female circumcision, a practice that opponents call female genital mutilation, has been a coming-of-age ritual among the Maasai tribe of Kenya for generations. But it's becoming less common in part because of a man who was trying to persuade tribe members to abandon the practice. Douglas Merite began his campaign about 10 years ago. He spoke to Rael Ambor, who reports for VOA from Kemane settlement in southern Kenya. Esther Gadhiwa-Ewart narrates this story.
Douglas Merite grew up in the foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro as a member of the Maasai tribe.
I remember when I was in primary school, when I was a young boy, I would look around my class and see only Maasai boys. The girls were from other tribes, but rarely Maasai girls.
Merite says the girls were being married off at a young age after undergoing female circumcision, a traditional rite of womanhood among the Maasai. But activists call it female genital mutilation, FGM, because of the permanent damage caused by cutting a woman's clitoris. Lillian Nashipai underwent the procedure as a young girl and says excessive bleeding is common and some even die.
We know the girls who have not been circumcised. Sometimes they visit these homes. I ask, where is so-and-so? They say she is here. If she is walking properly, I know that she has not been circumcised. If the girl is not walking properly, we arrest the father and mother.
In the Maasai community, women are the ones who perform the cutting and therefore have the power to end the practice. So Merite works closely with the Maasai women. He says since 2008, he has rescued over 100 girls from FGM, but had to first face off with his own people and tradition.
When we started this campaign, it was difficult. Others would ask, has Douglas gone mad? Even as they continued to speak. This was something that was deep in my heart. I did not give up. When I heard of any form of meeting in the area, I would come in and speak against FGM.
Campaigns like Merite's led to Kenya outlawing FGM in 2011. But the practice still occurs in remote rural areas, says Kimana Chief Joseph Paramanat.
We work with Douglas to reach such girls. When we get that information, we have police on standby. We go to the location, arrest all those involved, the parents, the person who performed the act, then we take the girl to the rescue center.
According to a 2016 United Nations report, 1 in 5 females in Kenya have undergone FGM, but those numbers are going down. Authorities and campaigners, including Merite, are promoting an alternative rite of passage where girls are graduated into womanhood without the cutting. For VOA reporter Rael Ombor in Kimana, I'm Esther Gidhui-Ewart.
From this, FGM campaign and many other campaigns, what I usually hear is really compassion and pity for a fellow human being. I mean, culture is very important, but is there a place for some of these practices in the future?
I see a lot of youth as well as adults pushing back at these cultural practices based on religion. I mean, the practice of FGM and several similar practices have no relationship with religion. As we all know, back in the days, culture superseded religion, and obviously culture preceded, religion. So the fact is that nobody was challenging it, but now people are asking questions, and if it doesn't have any place in religion, we don't want it. If there's nothing healthy about it, we don't want it.
Right. I noticed in that story that guy was young, the Maasai man, and that makes me think about the role of a younger generation in bringing some of these particularly harmful practices to an end. Again, I think as with nearly every issue, it does come down to socioeconomics, and this might end up being a generational thing. The continent is becoming more modern. People are
it's a young continent.
Right. People have access to information, access to the internet. The future is going to be, modernity. And so I think that proponents of these cultures and traditions are going to have quite a fight on their hands to try and keep them relevant.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think that these harmful practices will fade out as women become more empowered and as we inch closer to gender equality.
Right.
And also the fact that a culture, like we said, is very important. I respect culture. I mean, it's in Burundi, the different cultures in Burundi are actually the pillars of keeping my marriage strong and the way I raise my children and things like that. But
they bind us to our ancestors.
Yeah, but as we see, like Heidi said, what the young man is doing is precisely what needs to be done when you see that, your fellow human being is being mistreated. And so, there's a point where culture crosses a line, and when curving someone's appetite and subjecting them through pain is something that definitely should end.
Something that has become really controversial, especially in Southern Africa, is, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Umhlanga festival. This is the reed dance, the annual reed dance festival in Eswatini, which used to be Swaziland. And so this festival attracts every year tens of thousands of young women who come and they parade bare-breasted. They go up to the royal village and then they parade in front of the king and the queen. But, this again is people are starting to question this practice, because girls not only go to this festival to do this parade, but of course they have these long reeds, and you'll see some of the video here. They have these long reeds, and if your reed breaks, it means it's a signal that you're not a virgin. I mean, how can you fight the wind?
Right.
Sometimes. But of course, another practice that happens at these, they go through a sort of a week-long camp, and where they undergo virginity testing. And virginity testing is where elderly women come and they test to see whether you are still a virgin. Be it they look at your genitals and they decide either visually or in some cases, sorry to be a bit graphic, but they use their fingers, and people are beginning to get upset about this practice.
Do they do that in public?
It's done away from everything, but of course at these camps. And of course, when girls do pass, and if it turns out that you get your certificate, yes, you are a virgin, you also can get a scholarship.
Oh,
so
wow.
some of these girls say they feel forced,
invasion of privacy.
feel forced to go, while others are saying we will go because we get money and we might get a scholarship, and when we get money we can buy books, we can buy school bags, and we could possibly get an education. And of course, even for families are in no political economic position to not send their girls, and who is going to say no to the king? So again, we're seeing some pushback in some of these older cultures.
Sometimes it just feels like there's a lot of traditions and practices out there that have more say about my body than I have about my own body, and it really makes me angry.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's about perception. The continent gets a lot of backlash with the FGM because the campaign is that it's all over Africa. But, me, I've never went through it. I never even heard about it in Burundi. So I think that
some of these traditions, this is a global phenomenon. It's not just these are not just things that are unique to Africa. You find it elsewhere. But I will also tell you something that I have found also, that when there's no culture, no tradition left, I have found myself at the receiving end of that, because I come from so many different cultures and traditions that have been decimated over generations. I find that there's very little, if anything at all, that I can pass on to my children who are growing up in a very Western culture. And I sometimes struggle to find something that I can show them, pass on to them, to keep them connected to the place that I'm from and to my identity. So in that sense, as liberal as I'd like to think I am about certain things, I do, I must admit that sometimes you want to pass on something to
Might be a good idea to take them back home, once a year or, a couple times.
Or I think that we also need more writers to document our histories and our cultures, both the good and the bad, because if we had a book to look at our history, we can then decide, we can learn from our past.
Right. After the break, we'll introduce you to women who are raising awareness around rites of passage for the girls on the African continent. Stay tuned for Women to Watch.
Welcome back. This is Our Voices. Every day, African women on the continent and in the diaspora are doing extraordinary things. In our segment called Women to Watch, we highlight their contributions.
Ladies, allow me to take you back to Malawi, to the village of Ntakataka, where a woman chief is using her power for good. Chief Teresa Kachinda Moto is the ultimate Nkosi. You know what Nkosi is? That's a chief. And she's annulled over 900 child marriages in her village in 3 years and has banned sexual initiations of young girls in 2015. After years of political lobbying, Kachinda Moto and other campaigners got Malawi's parliament to pass a bill that sets the minimum age for marriage for both boys and girls at 18. Chief Kachinda Moto believes girls' education is the key to breaking the cycle of poverty and preventing lifelong health and social problems for women. I love what she says. My opponents here say I am defying our tradition, but in my view, we are redefining it.
This week, I'm watching Nigerian face model Adetutu Alabi, who uses social media to create awareness and change the narrative of people with tribal marking in Africa. Alabi has started the hashtag Tribal Marks Challenge on Instagram, calling on people to embrace their tribal markings. Early on, the campaign that gained the attention of megastar and singer Rihanna, which helped Alabi become a model for her latest Fenty Beauty campaign. She now advocates for a ban on facial scarring in Africa and wants permission to be sought before it is carried out.
We're also keeping an eye on Rebecca Gyumi, who at 31 years old has a list of accomplishments anyone twice her age would be very proud of. Successfully, she challenged her country's legal system in winning a landmark ruling in 2016 to raise the age of child marriage for girls in Tanzania from 14 to 18. She started a foundation to advocate for girls' education. She won a UNICEF Global Award. In addition, she's the recipient of the 2018 Human Rights Prize awarded by the United Nations.
Another woman to watch is the 28-year-old spokesperson of Renata, or Cameroon's Army of Aunties, Kathy Abafuda, who was herself a victim of breast ironing, a painful, dangerous practice designed to suppress a girl's physical development. Cameroon's Army of Aunties are comprised of more than 21,000 women volunteers in more than 350 groups around the country. They have come together as part of Renata, the National Aunties Network, to help victims of sexual abuse, violence, and early pregnancy rebuild their lives. So that's who we have our eye on this week. Who do you think deserves a shout out? Use the hashtag VOA Our Voices and tell us who you think is a woman to watch. It would be great to learn about the women who are working to ensure girls on the African continent have safe rites of passage to womanhood.
Be sure to watch Our Voices on the VOA website, where you can find the world's top news stories.
We leave you with a quote from my woman to watch, Nigerian fashion face model Adetutu Alabi, who used her voice to say, "I don't have any regrets about my tribal marks since I found myself and loved myself. It is a cultural thing and a thing that has been a part of African heritage." So while she embraces herself, nevertheless, she's fighting to ban this practice.
Well, and that is our show for this week. From all of us here on Our Voices, we thank you so very much for watching. Until next time, it's goodbye.